Welcome to Forged in Silence podcast, addressing the issues men face but rarely talk about. Today, Robbie and I have brought back Amy and Julie to have another one of these interesting and fun and vulnerable back and forth conversations with these two ladies. We figure we're gonna make this a pretty regular thing once a month, once a month and a bit or something like that, get us together and pick another topic for all of us to sit down and have the words in my head have a four-way conversation conversation
Easy now.
conversation, guys,
Got
get your
really
heads.
exciting really fast. Okay.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, if you say things slow enough, you let everyone's mind go straight to wherever they want to take it.
That's not the kind of
uh
people we are. We all knew exactly
no,
what you
I'm a
meant.
nun.
not at all. You're a
I'm a
nun.
nun
Yeah.
right
Oh
now.
No.
yeah. And I wear a steel belt too.
I'm not alone.
You're in good company, Amy. Good company.
Oh God. Oh man.
We're safe.
How is everyone? Robbie, you're gonna go last because we're gonna start with the ladies.
Okay.
You guys can rock paper scissors for it. I don't care who does goes what. Go loud one. Go for it. The
I'll
loud
go
one.
first. I'm doing all right. I've had better days, but you know what? I'm showing up, and that's what's important. So glad to be here. And it actually was a plus because I was like, oh, at least I'm going to be with like-minded people, you know. So that always makes it better.
Sure does. It sure does. You've had a couple rough days, but it's good to have you here, Amy. Thanks for joining us. And Julie.
I'm here. Life is getting busy right now. So spring it's just a busy season. It's when my kid gets busy. It's when the farm gets busy. It's when everything kind of gets rocking and rolling. And so I'm hanging in there. But yeah, thanks for having me. It's nice to hang out with you guys.
Always. This is I'm always gonna I feel like I'm always gonna look forward to these conversations because I'm not sure where they're gonna go, but also whatever comes from you two is gonna be a feels like a learning experience. So, Robbie.
It is the busy season for me as well. Uh, Daughter is finishing up school, track. She wants to do drumline, so it never ends. Work. Uh, we're getting ready before, the tourist season, so a lot of work there. Yeah, busy, but I'm here also.
Good, busy, kind of busy here right now. I've worked my butt off to get ahead in school, and I only have some assignments left. I got exams coming up, and then everything changes again for me because then I start going back to work. So I'm looking forward to it, but I'm also nervous about the change in commitment to my time and how that's going to affect me. It's been a couple years now since I've been full time in the workforce, and I'm going to go back full time in the workforce. So uh, everyone gets to welcome me back, especially the tax man.
He's looking forward to it.
I know, right? I can every time I walk outside right now, he's like, one more month.
Take your money
Anyways,
away.
yeah, no doubt. Anyways, so I'm going to get us right to the topic. I'm going to introduce this right how I sent it to you ladies yesterday. Do men really want vulnerable women? It's going to be a question for Robbie and I. Do women really want vulnerable men? Women crave vulnerability in men. This is something that you hear quite often is like you want to hear what men are thinking until it shows up or feels unfamiliar or uncomfortable, which is also it seems true in our eyes. And I'll dig into this one a little bit later, but men want softness from women, but do they only really want it in women who can still hold it together? And then when is vulnerability too much? And do you crave someone's vulnerability just because you want to feel needed? So these aren't going to be everything that we talk about right away, but they're going to be some of these topics, some of these questions that if we get stuck or slow down or whatever it is, we'll just throw one of these bombs in here and see where it goes. So let's start off with, do you ladies really want vulnerable men?
You go, Julie. I'll go after.
So I actually kind of talked about this a little bit in the last time that we all got together, where I think that in general, women say we want vulnerability from our men, and then we kind of don't know what to do with it when we do get it, if we do get it. Um, and I don't think that's even our fault. I don't think it means that we don't want it. I think it means none of us were raised with the skills to handle somebody else's vulnerability. I think that probably goes both ways, whether it's, the men or the women. Nobody should, in general, the majority of us, I'm going to guess all four of us here, weren't raised in lives where vulnerability was a thing. So nobody has any experience being vulnerable or receiving vulnerability. So then it's hard on both sides. Do I want a vulnerable man? Yeah, absolutely. Because I think that's where connection happens, and connection is necessary. Emotional intimacy is necessary. That's what makes any kind of relationship really meaningful um, and fulfilling. So yeah, absolutely. Do I always have the skills to handle it? Definitely not. I definitely have a lot of learning to do there, but I think that's okay. I think we all have to show up in relationships recognizing that we have a lot of places where, what opportunity for improvement. But yeah, I don't know if that's a good starting point.
I don't think there's such a thing as a bad starting point.
Okay.
So
Mm-mm.
you're on point. Nice work.
Okay, for me, I did it. I actually had some time to think about this topic, right? And trying to come from a place that's not jaded. Um, from what you said when you started, vulnerability was not valued in my home. It was actually easily attacked. So, if I ever saw my dad vulnerable, it was like an out of body experience. Something was really wrong. It signaled something is wrong. Um, am I comfortable and I can hold space for men to be vulnerable? Absolutely. And I think that's because I always sought something different than what my dad provided. Um, because I saw what my mom really needed. She needed someone to be gentle, right? And I kind of grew up in an environment where you were just told what to do and just fix that. So he didn't have to deal with that part as far as a woman being vulnerable, okay? Um, and I was trying to think back in my relationships, have I ever been icked out by vulnerability? And I was like, no. But when you ask the question, does it make you feel needed? That's probably not a true statement for me today. But in my childhood, I was kind of groomed to be a codependent caretaker. So I did derive my value from providing, and that's kind of made an interesting mix into me. And I was having a conversation earlier today, and I was like, I tended to attract passive men. And they would have mothers that were outspoken like me, but I think I mistook passive for vulnerable. And it is
Ooh.
absolutely not the same thing. And that's how I ended up in a 15-year relationship, eight-year marriage where conspiracy theories and Harry Potter weren't going to cut it. Conversations didn't happen. And it's because he appeared vulnerable because he could be soft, but it wasn't
Mm.
vulnerability. It was passiveness. And so, we had a really nice, unhealthy mix of he wanted someone to take care of everything and mother, And I had, well, I'm going to take care of everything, that kind of thing. Someone said, "Oh my God, you had to do all that stuff." I said, "He didn't ask me to do that stuff. I did that stuff." So, I've got to be honest there. It was a natural, we both stepped into that pattern pretty naturally. And, I just can't believe it didn't work out. Yeah, so,
As soon as one
um,
person breaks that pattern, everything falls apart, right?
I
Yeah.
broke it. I got sober. I became accountable. I and I know this isn't a sobriety podcast, but part of my drinking and my addiction was so I wouldn't grow because I didn't want to have a failed marriage, and I always felt like I outgrew partners. And then now I have a clear MO. That's what happened in both my marriages. So I started drinking a lot towards the end too, and it's because I was scared to change. And I learned something about myself in probably this last year. And it was actually through a conversation Steve and I had, and it was about vulnerability and how important that is, right? Like that's where we get our connection. I had never been vulnerable with myself. And so I looked vulnerable to my spouse, but there was always that safety net pulled back that I held tight. And I didn't even realize I was doing that. That was deeper than what was on the crust. So, yeah, no, but I think I mistook passive for vulnerability.
That's interesting. Yeah, I haven't even heard that. I haven't heard that one yet, but I can see how that would roll. Robbie, got any thoughts here from the anything the ladies have said or your own?
Yeah, Amy hit on a few things there. Um, with my childhood and my absent father, I always found women that were like my mother, and they would, wanted to take care of me and all this other stuff. And I believe I wouldn't open up myself to be vulnerable because I was just taking. Uh, then, it got to a point where I didn't want to take anymore. And usually that would end the relationship. Not usually, every single time. The resentment would come in. But I was not vulnerable myself. So I wasn't sharing what I needed and those things. But it brought up something to me also, hearing, vulnerability. Men and women are different, have different needs, wants. And a lot of times, myself, when a woman would be vulnerable with me, uh, I found it as a weakness. And the weakness was whatever the situation was. And I have this problem. I can't take care of it. I need you to fix this problem. Uh, Not never can we work on this problem together. Or, I was the problem and I needed to fix myself to fix her problem. Uh, so I was thinking about this topic a lot, and I was just, of course, I want someone to be, a woman to be vulnerable. It's a stepping stone, it's communication, it's connection, all those things. But like Julie was saying, I really have to learn myself. Like, I need to take some baby steps, and like, if something's getting told to me that I'm not okay with, like, hey, I understand you're being vulnerable, but we need to slow down a little bit because you're making me feel very vulnerable with whatever it could be. And I'm going to say it's going to be, my self-worth could be affected. And, for most of us here, our self-worth was in the tanker for a while, and trying to build that back up. I don't want to take that away from myself in the first place, to give a little bit of vulnerability to someone else. This is selfish, but it's okay. I'm going to be selfish right now. Um, to make them feel better. Uh, that's about where I'm at right now.
Is there something in there, Robbie, about taking someone else's vulnerability personal? So, would it feel like an attack as opposed like attack on you like you talked about self-worth. And so if you take things personally, that it's affect is it affecting you personally? I'm just thinking when somebody else is being vulnerable and how it could be triggering potentially, and it brings up your own stuff
Hmm.
in the midst of it all, and then you have the wherewithal hopefully to communicate back like, hold on, we need to take a step back again. um, I know all of us have a propensity to work on ourselves, and myself included, so vulnerability becomes a key part of that. uh, Julie mentioned it for being a key cog, a key piece of what emotional intimacy looks like. And I'm trying to think about that. Like, for me, a woman to be vulnerable means she is giving me something that I need to care for. And as a man, that is something that I can try and protect, if that makes any sense. Right? So I can hold that, I can protect that, it's still a learned thing because I didn't grow up in an environment where vulnerability was something that was like, oh yeah, sure, let's just take that and have a conversation about it and understand where you're at. It was also shut down. So learning how to accept that, and I think my brain just shot off in a million different ways here. That, and now I lost myself. But it's, I feel like it's one of those things that without it, you're screwed. And with it, it can cause a lot of emotional pain and a lot of suffering if you don't know how to deal with it properly. And I think that's where the breakdown between men and women go. I feel like stereotype, here we come. Women have an easier time at least being vulnerable. Women also, instead of being vulnerable, they're passive aggressive. And men, instead of being vulnerable, just go to anger
Yep.
or shut down or silence.
Yep.
It's probably pretty accurate. Pretty accurate
Yep.
stereotype.
Yep.
And again, I'm backwards. My men were passive aggressive,
Oh, how
And
funny.
and
like,
I was
and I'm
right
sure
here.
it goes
I was
both
always
ways,
backwards.
right? But I like, that's why I threw out stereotype, and it's good to have different on here. But I mean, passive aggressive behavior is not vulnerable. It is
Mm-mm.
not showing up. It is not saying, here's what my needs are. And that in and of itself is something that is really extremely vulnerable to just ask for.
You know, I was thinking about, was I vulnerable? This really got me going down a train of thought here, and then I had learned that I wasn't really vulnerable with myself a while back. But then I was like, why wasn't I? Um, because I felt, not, I want y'all to take into consideration that not only was I an alcoholic, but I was also severely codependent. It just looked different than I need you to make my decisions for me. Um, I felt like any time I needed to say something that I thought that that might disappoint them or make them feel less than, um, I internalized it and I made it a resentment, thinking, and I held on to it and I lived like that for a long time. And then I'm like, I was never heard, and the only time I was brave was at the end to go, we didn't have any hard conversations. And that's because my fear of not being loved outweighed my fear of what my needs were. And I didn't want to be a disappointment. Um, and I think that was a fear of failure on my part too, that I felt like any perceived vulnerability was a failure. So, man, it was just This was a good one. Like I really got to dig around, you know. But
I
yeah,
mean
so
that
I would
comes
say I'm fine. I'm okay. I got it.
right. Anytime a woman says they're fine, I call bullshit.
We try
That's
to say
tough.
it different. Did you hear that? Not I'm fine. I'm fine. I got this. Yeah.
I
It's
call
still
bullshit.
bullshit.
Anytime. I'm fine. Uh-huh.
I think there's a certain amount of value too in, especially people who might be listening to this and just don't have the same language that we've all gained to talk about like what is vulnerability? What does that even mean? Because I think for a lot of people, they assume that vulnerability is just expressing your emotions. And I didn't realize that that's what like how most people define vulnerability if they just hear the word. Um, and so I was kind of thinking about like, and I think vulnerability, what feels vulnerable to each of us is different. But we go back to the Andrew Grammer song that Steve and I love to talk about, but say the words that burn when they leave your mouth, right? What is hard to say? That's vulnerability. So for me, if somebody's doing something that's bothering me, that's making me uncomfortable, that's making me feel bad, if there's something I need to address with another person and I kind of need to ask them to change their behavior, that is super vulnerable for me. That's really hard to do. I don't like, I'm so afraid of making someone else feel bad because I don't like to be made feel bad and made to feel bad. So that's a super vulnerable conversation for me to come up and just say, hey, so I need to talk to you about this thing that you've done or that you did or that you're doing, and have a conversation about that. That's one of my really vulnerable things. It's not super vulnerable for me to express my emotions. I'm pretty well versed in that. I've done that for a long time. So that's not that difficult for me, but hard conversations are super vulnerable. And I don't know, I think it's probably worth talking about what vulnerability feels like which conversations are vulnerable for each of us, because I think it's different for everyone. Um, and based on all of the stuff that, we've been through in our lives and all of the baggage that we carry and all of the things that trigger us. But that's probably my biggest, hardest one is saying something to someone that they don't want to hear, that
Mm.
needs to be said anyway. Like I hate doing that.
So when that happens, for me, the reason why I hesitate, anxious attachment style coming, the reason why I hesitate is because I feel like love or attention or kindness, caring, whatever that may be, is going to be pulled away from me.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what makes me hesitate in being vulnerable. That's what makes me hesitate to have difficult conversations. Uh, I'm not really afraid that you're not gonna like me. I'm afraid that people are gonna leave. Like that's a thing
Yeah.
I've said to you, Julie, for like a really long time, right? I'm just afraid that people are gonna leave. Like that's what goes through. That's the feeling. And I don't know if the root of that is loneliness. I don't think so because I'm a fairly social butterfly, but it's the people that I care for and care about that stops me. I do two things because I'm very black and white, I think, in this, where when there is something, I run into it. I run into it full bore. I'm like, okay, we need to have this conversation. This is difficult. It's going to be hard. I'll stand in there and do that. And at the same time, it is if it isn't met well, then I think that's where I struggle, big time, big time.
You know what else is like? I used to be fearful. I have no idea what I look like in a relationship, by the way, now. I have no idea. This is a whole brand new me, and I've not navigated it. I have an ideal in my head, but so this is not based on experience, but this part is. I thought that if I asked them to do something different, I had fear they were going to point back at me. And I
Hmm.
had fear of change.
Yeah.
And I had fear of someone saying I wasn't. Anything they could have said would mean you're not good enough. So that was definitely a personal thing, and it kept me from having hard conversations. Or, you know, if we have a growth mindset, which, I always tried to kill mine, but I have one, I'd go, well, what am I doing? Well, maybe if I just fix this from my end, then I don't have to have that conversation. And that quietly makes me go, you motherfucker. Look what I'm doing here.
Was me. Anytime there was anything, I'd just be like, what can I do differently? How can I do better?
It's
What do I need
me.
to...
I'm the problem.
Exactly.
I
Oh,
know.
and then I'd think that could make me avoid whatever else I needed to actually deal with. For
Do
sure.
y'all know what I heard that was? And I don't remember who said this to me. It might have been my sponsor. Number one, I tried to control outcomes because of my trauma. Okay. So I felt like if I took care of everything, then we wouldn't have to worry about those things. We don't have to put out that fire, right? I'm controlling an outcome. But he said the reason you take all accountability and responsibility, everything, Amy, is because you don't like to be uncomfortable and you get to wrap it up in a bow and it's done. He goes, and baby, that's selfish. I was like, man, I don't want to be called selfish, but I was, because it caused me discomfort. Woo, we better get rid of that real fast. I just could not stand any amount of rejection or discomfort. It just, it still bothers me really bad when it happens. You know what I mean? So, but I did look up the definition of vulnerable, but what kind of popped up underneath it was susceptible. And it says to physical and emotional attack or harm. So when we're vulnerable, we're susceptible to physical or emotional attack. Not that it's going to happen, but we fear it. So
Vulnerability is a risk. That's what we
it,
say a lot. It's a huge risk every time.
yeah.
So I'm thinking in relationships, like one of the very first steps once you become, you know, in like a deeper relationship is the words "I love you," especially from a man. When they go to say those words for the first time, "I love you," it's like opening up their heart. It's opening for a man. I'm speaking in, for men experience. It's giving everything. And women can take it how they want to, but in experiences they get laughed at. They get their protection taken down because they said I love you, so they're not the protector anymore. And one thing that I've learned is like when you get to those part of the relationship where that you do feel like you love that other person, that can be the beginning or the end, for some of us. And sometimes when women will say that to men, whenever it is, you can. I'm just speaking from my experience. If it's too soon, you're gonna see it in my body language. And sorry, that's probably gonna be the end of the relationship. That's like for me thinking when hearing you guys talk, like that's the first step of vulnerability in a relationship is some of the words we speak to each other. And it was just listening to you talk, Amy, it's like we can use those to our advantage or disadvantage now that we know what we know.
Mm-hmm.
And Steve and I have talked about this before, like another guy saying I love you to another guy. That's like bros world. It depends, like, taboo. Or if you say that to another guy, they're like, look at these, whatever, they have feelings.
I had a hard time saying that to you.
Yeah. We
That
both
was
talked
not
about it.
easy, man. That was like not easy.
Right.
Do it. Do it.
I did.
We've said it to
I
each
do.
other
I
multiple
love Robbie.
times.
Robbie's awesome. I love that man. He's amazing.
But when this is weird that we're talking about. When we said that to each other, though, it opened up a door to talk about it
Yeah, it did.
because it was very awkward. But we just talked about it, and it was just like, it's okay for guys to say they love each other. Like, it's okay for brothers to love each other, sisters to love each other, father, son love each other. It's like, but this is part of the whole where society gets in the way type of thing too. It's just where and this is where my issues come in, my experience comes in, is you may be an open book to me with societal issues that you make your own issues. Does that make sense?
Keep going.
Um, like with women can, if a woman has a problem, society's supposed to fix it.
Yeah.
If men have a problem, we're supposed to fix them ourselves.
Mm.
I think I agree with that.
It's I don't think he's very wrong.
Is
There's
that how most women are? Because I am not that.
Yeah, but you're different though. Like I'll give you an example, and this is gonna be a Troll City. I think after this one,
No, let's do it. That sounds great.
abortion and child support.
Okay.
If a woman wants to get abortion, society will come around them. Her body, her choice. Cool, whatever. I don't care.
I don't
A
think
man
that's
has to pay
happening.
child support. He doesn't pay child support. We don't know the circumstances of either of those people,
Right.
right? We can play that game, but the first thing if a man doesn't pay child support is he's a loser or whatever you want to call him, doesn't work, doesn't care about the kid. But the women can do whatever they want with that kid, and we don't know if the guy wants that kid or the whole thing. But we're supposed to fix that on ourselves. Like we get forced to, hey, but we can't talk about, do men have the choice of saying, I don't want this kid, I don't want to pay child support, I'll sign the papers and goodbye.
Mm.
It's a shitty thing to say, right? I understand that, but this is like one of the main things that gets talked about a lot is man doesn't pay child support, his driver's license get taken away, he can't hunt or fish, but a woman can go get 4 or 5 abortions and that's okay.
And the
I'm
man
not,
has no say. Okay, no.
yeah,
Once you put all of that together, now it's a clear picture, and I understand what your argument is in that particular situation. I still think I'm different, but
yeah, oh
but
yeah, yeah.
that's a valid point that you just made, for sure.
That's where he's coming from, and I think when he talks about it in that way to make that point, he has to use the two extremes to make the point. Uh, but that the trickle down effect of those two extremes trickles down to the more actually his argument to begin with. Even though, like, I understand that it doesn't fully encompass all women. One of the questions, or one of the things that I have been seeing a lot more lately, and this is at least maybe it's the algorithm feeding me this because the algorithm has a habit of doing that sort of thing. But it's when is too much vulnerability from a man to a woman? When does it get to a point where she starts losing respect for him? Because I've seen kind of over and over these stories of the guy finally says something to his wife, guy finally says something to his girlfriend or partner or whatever that is, and it's not long after that when he finally like opens up and tells the truth, she's gone. Now, mind you, I would venture a guess if it's happened that way, there's a lot more issues in that relationship than just that one instance, right? Because there has been a loss of respect along the way, and that was probably what's the straw that broke the camel's back.
Thinking about that, because I have been in a marriage where I totally lost respect for a person. And again, like I said, I mistaked vulnerability for passiveness. And I mean, since we're throwing things out there, I'll throw it out there. So they couldn't keep a job. And I was always the rock, always. And when I had my son, man, I had to go to the doctor. Now, hear this out. I had to go to the doctor because I wanted to hit him with a freaking frying pan for taking a nap on the couch. And I'm like, you worked part time while I was busting my ass big and pregnant, working at a 24-hour clinic. I mean, I have always shown up in that way. And there was just, I'll never forget, it was right before I asked for a divorce. We were standing in the kitchen and he goes, and it turns out later that he had some things going on he didn't even realize that were an issue. I mean, gosh, we had a kid together 20 years ago. But he said, "Do you have any hope in me?" I said, "No, I don't." Because I had given chance and chance and chance. Now, is that vulnerability? Or was he just seeking approval at that moment to go, am I still okay doing this? You know what I mean? So that's not really vulnerability. Um, and I have another friend I'll call Bob. I have a friend, it's just a friend. And I always think that he's kind of crass and this and that. We can like cut up and whatever. And the minute, like, I almost hide my vulnerability because I'm like, oh, no, he's going to be kind of immature about that or something like that. And the minute I do, and he's like the most deep person I've ever talked to, and I'm like, this is so crazy, right? But I was talking to a friend about him today, and I'm just like, he kind of scares me. He makes me scared to be vulnerable because I don't know what that attack is going to look like if it's going to come, but I'm waiting on it because I'm like, I am just too fragile right now to be torn down. I don't have it in me. And I'm starting to notice that I'm probably avoiding relationships and putting myself out there because I'm like, I've worked so hard to be okay. It's making me emotional just talking about it. I don't know. I don't think I can be wrecked again. So this was a good topic because I can appear vulnerable right now with all of y'all, but I really want to cry like a baby because I'm scared to death. I was like, I don't have another shitty one in me. I don't have it. So that tells me I'm in no shape to even attempt to do it because rejection is a part of life in that. And I was thinking when Robbie was like, if so, Steve, your anxious attachment, I just had to take this test. And my therapist was like, I think you're anxious. And I'm like filling it out. I'm like, oh no. Can you be 50-50? And then guess what I am? I'm fearful
Fearful
avoidant.
avoidant. I was
Yeah.
gonna call that.
I am fearful avoidant. So that explains why, hey, Robbie, we've been dating a long time and you can be vulnerable and you're safe with me and you think I'm vulnerable, but I'm not. There is some part of me that's got, where I could like hit the flamethrowers on my boot and like run, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Distract. But that also made me think of when you were talking about when a guy says I love you first, and and if a woman does it to you first, you're like, ugh. Can I tell you what my brain was doing when you were doing that? I was like, man, if I didn't say that first, I'd be like, ooh. Ooh, we might need a back, but that's my control again, controlling my environment to be safe. And man, when you're a control freak like I am, that I didn't even know I was, around those things, it just makes it so much harder. You know, it is. It's hard to be vulnerable, period. Man or
Sure.
woman, I think. It's just dangerous ground. That's
It
what it
is.
feels
It
like,
is
danger.
dangerous. It is scary. And when you've been met with anything other than love and acceptance and empathy, when you've been vulnerable, it makes it even scarier. Um, to go back to like your question about like, was it how much is too vulnerable? Was that kind of what it was? Um, I think there's a line between vulnerable and like needy.
Mm,
And I think that that's an important line to understand, and that can go for women or for men for sure. It's one thing to be vulnerable and to show up and be like, hey, I'm really struggling with this thing. If it's all the time, like you're not handling any of your stuff, you just want somebody to hold your hand through every moment of life, that goes from being vulnerable to needy. I also think if you show up with vulnerability expecting the other person to like carry your burden for you, then that becomes really needy, and it's an unhealthy balance. You know, there's
Mm-hmm.
hey, I'm really struggling with this. Do you have a few minutes so we can problem solve and maybe give me some perspective so I can move forward with it myself or whatever, versus I'm really struggling with this, fix it for me. Deal with this because I can't deal with it. And I think that there's a balance in there, and I don't exactly know what it is, and I'm sure it depends on the person or the people in the relationship. But too much vulnerability to me starts bordering on feeling needy, and then that turns into I don't want anything to do with this anymore. And like you can take your vulnerability and take it over there with you. Which on my side, and I'm thinking more like in friendships right now than in my personal relationship, but for me, when I'm like, okay, we're good, you can go over there now, then I feel like I look like the avoidant asshole. um, because I'm like just I don't know, there's limits. And I love vulnerability, but it should look like shared problem solving and shared growth, not hold my hand through every hard thing I'm ever going to go through in life or whatever. So,
So what I'm hearing from you is the lack or the losing say the losing of respect comes from the neediness, not from the vulnerability.
yes, absolutely. And I think that depending on the person, vulnerability and neediness can be confused, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially as somebody who, I don't know. I think that that's an easy one to confuse.
I'm thinking now, like healthy vulnerability compared to neediness. A lot of relationship I've been in is they use the vulnerability to get their needs met, and now I can see that, uh, and I'm thinking to myself like, where this is going to turn into a conversation, like, because it's going to be like, I know you're being vulnerable with me. You had a horrible day. Every day's a horrible day for you. You want me to rub your feet every day, whatever, right? Um, and I'm gonna have to go, hey, I'm here to help you. Let's figure this out. Like you're saying, Julie, let's problem solve. But now you're like borderline needy, and I don't know what healthy, vulnerability looks like in a relationship, like with someone that I would love or something like that. Uh, with us here right now, I think it's pretty easy to decipher what healthy vulnerability is because we're not asking for anyone to meet our needs. Um, well, that's a weird way to put it. I'm not coming to you with all my problems every single day. I could, but I don't know. It's just listening to this. It's like it's opening another door for me. Balance, right? We all need balance. And with my own daughter, it's like vulnerability or neediness, or
Speaking of,
yeah,
Speaking,
exactly. As the door opens,
yeah,
um, um, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, it's like I would love to hear what like someone that specializes in vulnerability, like what do they deem as healthy vulnerability?
that seems like a podcast guest.
or is there two? Like, does that depend on the two people in the relationship? You know, you talk about needs, and I think it's really vulnerable to express your need and
Mm-hmm.
to be able to say, hey, I'm needing connection. I'm needing validation. I need to feel more supported, whatever that is. It's when we use vulnerability to make ourselves look helpless as if someone takes care of
Yeah.
us. That's like not expressing your needs. That's trying to get your needs met by just looking pitiful.
It, it's kind of
That's
abusive. That's abuse.
It's
that's
manipulation,
I was
100%.
just about to say that you get into manipulation territory then when you're just being vulnerable so you can get your needs met instead of asking. I don't feel like that's vulnerability if you're just being vulnerable to get your needs met because then you're avoiding the actual vulnerability.
For sure. If you were to
You're
ask
just
someone, though, they would tell you they're being vulnerable.
right. Now we're getting into victim kind of mentality at this point in time, aren't we?
Yeah, for sure.
That's because like the farther you go down that scale, right? You go down the scale of neediness. I'm looking for some pity. I'm looking for some. Uh, I don't. I'm looking to be taken care of
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's
because
a good point. Yeah. Looking for
right.
somebody to take care of you is not the same thing as vulnerability.
No,
No.
and I think maybe that's where the line gets blurry, right? You're talking about the neediness, and that's the taking care of part. That, and I mean, sometimes you can turn around and completely express that, and that's happened before. I've come straight out, and I'm like, I'm being needy right now. I understand that, but I need some, like, I could use that feeling of support. You know what I mean? It's taken me a hell of a long way to get to that spot, but when you do, it comes to the point where if it doesn't show up either, you have to try and not take offense by it. Then it gets vulnerable. Then it's vulnerable as hell because now you're actually you're saying, "Here's what my need is." It's embarrassing, especially when you're a guy. That's what it feels like, anyways. And I say, especially when you're a guy, probably just as embarrassing as a woman to say, "Hey, listen, I'm needy." And if you're one of those strong people, or you feel like you, I'm butchering this right now, but anyways,
If you tend to be pretty independent,
yeah, that's the
then
word I'm looking for.
needing to reach out and actually depend on someone feels really vulnerable.
Yes.
I went through that recently when I lost my dog, and it was day after day after day of anxiety and not knowing what was going to happen. And like my brain would just churn and my heart was pounding for hours at a time. And so, way more than I normally would. I'm like, Steve, will you please just come sit at my house so I don't have to be alone? Like that happened multiple times. And that felt really needy, but that's not my normal. I'm in crisis mode. I need someone here to sit here with me. I don't need you to fix it. Let's have a conversation about anything besides my crisis. And so, but yeah, I think if you're independent and then you have to show up and ask someone to let you depend on them for a little bit, it feels really vulnerable.
Ye-
So the other thing here is, as a guy, and I think women like to fix things too, but guys, I think when, and I can go back to previous life when I didn't know how to deal with a woman when she was emotional, where when she was emotional, I would immediately go to fix it mentality and then try and fix her problem for her,
mm-hmm.
which then alleviates the emotional distress part that I don't know how to deal with. So, and that's backwards. I mean, I understand now. I understand now that that is the backwards way for me to approach this whole situation where I just need to shut the fuck up and listen and allow myself to be open to it. Like, I do have to ask some questions. I do have to insert myself to say, "Hey, I'm here. I'm here to help if you need help. I'm also here to listen if that's just all you need." The more times than not, if I just listen and don't fix, I feel like I get more respect for having the self-control to not go and try and fix the problem, but sit and listen to the problem and let let the other person try and figure out what their solution looks like. The self agency there and the ability to just, I'll say it again, shut the fuck up is like that skill is hard to learn when for 40 years all you know is, okay, there's some distress here, there is a problem. Guy, like my man head says, okay, there's a problem here. I need to fix this problem, and when I fix this problem, everything else, everything goes away, everything's fine, and I did my duty. Um, Sometimes I just need to ask, is there something I can do here rather than try and read anyone's mind and let that be someone else's option for me to say, yeah, sure, I can go and run and do this, or no, you know what, I just need you to sit here and listen. And I think if there is a skill that we can all learn is just sit and listen.
Hmm. Yeah.
I think like everyone will go farther if we just figure out how to sit and listen. And I mean, I'm still learning that, for crying out loud.
For me, if my husband tries to fix my problem that I'm upset about, it feels dismissive. It feels like he is like, why can't you just see the solution and go handle this problem? Like it feels, and that's probably part in the delivery, right? But like if I'm really struggling, sometimes I just need to sit in whatever shit I'm sitting in for a little bit. Like I might even know the way to fix it. I might just need to feel it first. But he tends to throw solutions and try to fix everything. Like just hurry up and get over this. Like stop feeling the way you're feeling, get over it. It's not that big of a deal. And it's really unhelpful and just makes me shut down and kind of withdraw even more.
You know, I totally understand that too. And you know what? I am guilty and awful when I didn't know better. But like, if I did ask for help and the solution was not a smart one, or I felt that it was smart or efficient, I would take it back and I would go do it. And then
Ooh, nasty.
how
Nasty.
is that person supposed to come to me and
That
think
is,
I value them
yep,
and
that
their
is
decision
nasty.
making? Hey,
I
I'm
felt
brutally
that one,
honest.
Amy. I felt that one, Amy. I felt that one.
Do you
Exactly.
know how hard it was to think that and not say anything? So that's what brought that up when you were talking about just shut the fuck up. I had to go, I don't have to watch it. Move along. It's not the way you would do it, but stop. But you know, I recognize that this is the dumbest thing. We fought about the lawn. We never had fights. We fight about that lawn. I'm like, you're cutting my grass too short. Killed all my St. Augustine, but when I let him do it, all my yard looked like crap, and it still does, and I'm working on it. But you know what? If your relationship is important and we're wanting to foster that, you know, we have so much about toxic masculinity. Let's talk about toxic femininity.
100%.
Okay? I'm telling you
Please
right
do.
now.
I'm gonna just sit here and listen to this
Well,
because
I'm
I
just
feel
telling
like
you right
it's
now, when I
damn
don't have, okay, we'll say this, a toxic man lies, can't protect, abandons, attacks. We do the
deuces.
same
Yeah.
thing. The behaviors are the same, but in a different way. Me going, okay, thanks for that. How dismissive. How toxic. I just said, you know what? I don't really value what you have to say about this. I don't know why I ask you questions. Can you just be quiet? And then I'm going to go, well, he never offers solutions. How are you supposed to when I haven't fostered that in you and in my relationship? And, you know, I'm guilty. And I have, again, it was a sick, broken people attract broken people. Healed people attract healed people, or healing people, or people willing to heal things. We don't have to be perfect. And I had someone, a male friend, I was talking to the other night for 2 hours, and he's like, Amy, you of all people, you got in that truck? You let that happen? And I went, yeah. You know, it was like one of the last times I abandoned myself before I said I will never do that again. And he goes, why? I said, I was broken, friend. I was absolutely broken until about a year and a half ago when I decided I didn't want to be that anymore because it hurt those that I love unintentionally. But yeah, we're toxic too. And the way that goes, I mean, y'all don't have to bend your whole world to make sure that we're not frickin' offended. And same thing, if we aren't here to help you be okay in that space, look, I could have been on a man-hating headhunt this last 3 days. I'm not. You know what? That was a broken person. So let me be part of a solution and let me get on here and talk to other healers and diggers that we like to dig in ourselves and figure out why. Because a lot of hurt is unintentional.
For
And it's
sure.
very easy to take personal. Trust me, I'm fighting off the personal demon a lot. And but I have to ask, what did I really bring to the table? What did I make good? And the answer is probably not a whole lot that last 4 years. So, I mean, there's my accountability that comes with it. And I think, I'd rather be part of the solution to help foster for those that do suffer in silence because the world's not ready for them to actually have an opinion. Or if they do, then they're toxic. No, we have to foster that thing or we're not going to get it. I'm at least no longer at risk for falling victim to someone who is emotionally intelligent, and I won't mistake passive for vulnerability because I had to do it in myself. But guess what? I just made myself better for someone out there. And we just continue to build on that. But we have to show up for y'all. This is a rough world for y'all, and I'm not playing to the men thing, but it is. I'm raising a son. I have two older brothers. I have a lot of male friends, and in some spaces it's pretty scary out there. I mean, I raise a boy that or a man that I say, I know you know consent, and I don't give a shit if you have to say it loud in front of 10 people. You know what I mean? Things are just dangerous sometimes, but you know what? Sometimes we aren't that divine feminine where we allow healthy masculinity either.
For sure. Yeah, I could probably rant on the feminist thing for a while. I don't know that I really need to like run with that, but I
You're
feel
loud a
like
little bit.
in general, the whole anti-man thing, like the anti-masculinity thing, at its core is like an opportunity to not take responsibility and accountability for who you ought to be as a woman. And I don't know, it's really sad what women as a whole have done to men, and the demands that we make. And it's like we want to break them all the way down so there's nothing masculine left about them and then complain about what they've become. Doesn't make any sense. And it's not fair. And I think that if you look at the healthiest, like emotionally healthiest women that I know, they understand what actual healthy masculinity looks like. It's not the asshole over here that's beating his wife, but it's also not the man that's so passive that he lets women walk all over him. And there's a middle ground that's really important that we find. And I think that the healthiest women that I know where that middle ground is. They can see it and they honor it and respect it. But I think it's a terrifying world out there right now for men. And I think it's really, I don't know, women have just taken it so fucking far. Everything sucked for women for a really, really long time. 100%. It doesn't suck for us now. So we need to stop acting like we're still downtrodden and aren't capable and aren't treated the same. Like at this point, it's not about women's equality. It's all about women's superiority. And that's completely unfair. We're trying to like flip the script and shove men down and make them less important, and nobody's gonna win as long as we're doing that.
I heard a quote, and I don't know who it was from, but it was something along the lines of today's men are paying for the men, this like the sins, the misgivings, the mistakes of the men of the past.
My father.
100%.
Right? Like we understand that women's rights weren't what they are now, but we're still pounding on the box. And here comes the trolling for Steve. We're still pounding on the box of that we still like the same issue that we still need to create something out of nothing now. Like you got what you want. You basically have what you wanted. Am I not wrong? Like you have essentially all of the things. Now you have. I'm gonna shut up here because I was gonna take that too far, so I won't. Um,
think it has a lot to do where you're raised too. I
Yeah,
was
oh,
I
for
was
sure.
taught and groomed to center a man, and then the only man that we centered was dangerous. He was not safe emotionally or anything. I learned to just not do that. And it was my sister sitting down going, make sure you always have money in the bank you can leave when you want to. And I did. And now I teach my kid that make sure you have enough money in the bank. But it's just about that self-preservation right there. But I think it depends on where we're coming from too. Um, sometimes women like me are they'd like to burn me at the stake where I am because I'm like he can make his own plate. If I do that's kindness, it's not an expectation. He'll be all right.
I don't mind
Bless
making
his
my own
heart.
plate. Not at
No,
all.
look.
Can
I
I'm
you
just
telling
tell?
you.
Like you're talking about like men today are forced to atone for the shortcomings and all of that of the men from the past, from past generations, right?
that's
And women
basically.
are like, hell yes, and you should pay for that, right?
Hmm.
Imagine if we all had to pay for our parents' mistakes and all of our
Right?
parents
Oh
and then our
shit, there's an
grandparents'
example
failures.
for it. Yep.
Like, we don't deserve to have to pay for that. We deserve to grow and change and learn and heal and do better. But that doesn't mean we also need to be held back and shamed perpetually because our great great
True.
grandparents fucked up a lot, right?
Well, I think it's our responsibility as people that are growers that we raise our children in such a fashion. That's where it
Yes.
changes.
Yes. It
You know,
changes
I
moving forward. It doesn't change by dwelling on the past and trying to atone for past mistakes from other people.
I think it's our responsibility as people who have grown an understanding of emotional health, healing, emotional regulation, emotional intelligence, um, finding the courage to say the things you need to say. It's upon those people to stand in front of the people that are still trying to figure it out. Uh, One of the reasons why Robbie and I are doing this is for that reason. It's to give a voice to men who still continue to suffer in silence because they haven't found the words or the people or the
role
it
model.
it well, hell yeah, the role model too, the example of a person that they maybe would like to be.
Huh?
And I mean, this is going to sound crazy when it comes out of my mouth. If I could be a role model for another man, that's a fucking honor. Uh,
And a healthy example of one.
I mean,
Same
that's
for
my
us.
goal. That's my goal. The goal of this is to just share our experiences and share knowledge and share fucking just reality for crying out loud because it's not perfect and it is ugly. And I'm Robbie, unless you got something else to say, I'll just wrap this up.
You know, on closing, I do have a leak in my house.
No.
You
Yeah,
want me
I
to
think,
fix that, Robbie?
please, can you? Please. I'll make you a plate if you can fix my plumbing.
Done. This is going to work out.
um, something, breaking the cycle. Uh, as you guys were talking about when I came back in, is like, our grandparents, great grandparents, we are realizing that we get to break that cycle and move on. And that's pretty meaningful to us to be able to break that cycle within ourselves. And I often hear this come up too is, they were just doing the best that they could with what they had. And I'm all about the empathy, but that didn't make everything okay for what they did. And um, we are living that, what they did right now, and we're fixing that. And we get to stop and break that cycle for, our children, or for people out there listening, all the men, all the women out there listening. We're hoping that we can break the cycle, and you can sit down and think about breaking the cycle if it needs to be broke. And it's okay not to forgive. and it's okay to move on, and silence isn't okay. Finding that connection and finding people to talk with is huge. And Steve, like you were saying, to be a role model. As a man right now, like when I think about role models, when I was younger, it was really easy. It was all famous people and they're all, athletes and stuff like that. Now, when in my age, like looking up at role models, it's like, it's really hard to find men and women to like, I'm not the perfect life, right? Because we all know that is like it's fake. A lot of it's fake. That society stuff like that is just not real life. And I also don't want to be like, man, that guy's fought a lot of battles. I look up to him. I want to find someone that is like us, has found their faults and willing to grow from them, and like to draw that line in the sand, and say enough is enough, and it's time to move on. And I can't be silent anymore. I need to talk. I need to find my people, men or women, and then we can all do this together. I think I know myself, a lot of time I'll put myself in a silo thinking that I need to do this on my own. Then, every Monday when I go to that meeting, I get reminded, what the fuck's wrong with you? And it's just showing up, right? It's just me getting on and turning the computer on, turning the camera on, and sitting there listening to the people and just showing up. It's like, God damn it, you're right. I don't have to do this alone. And I think a lot of us, think that we're not doing it alone. But Amy, it sounds like sometimes you get into your head where I have to do this alone, and I'm the same way. I'm the same way.
Scared to depend.
Yeah. Well, you were talking about the relationship part, and I'm right there with you. It's like I have done so much work to get where I'm at. I am not willing to give that up right now to someone else
Yeah.
because
I don't know how to say you let me down nicely.
I think mine now would be go fuck yourself.
I can do that.
It's just yeah, that's my ending piece right there.
Robbie, I think you summed it up pretty good. We don't need to do this alone, plain and simple, whether it's talking to another man or talking to another woman. I don't think we can do this without each other, plain and simple. Not just guy to guy, not just woman to woman, right? I think it takes guys to hold other men accountable, and I think it takes other women to hold other women accountable. And we do that for the greater good for us as a whole. And so, if there is any guys out there, and if there is any ladies out there that you're suffering in silence and you are alone, you don't have to be, because there's two ladies here I know that would be more than willing to listen, and I know there's two guys here that would be more than willing to listen. So I want to say thank you, Julie and Amy, for coming on and doing this again. I feel like we need to do this like once a month. If you
It's
guys are
good.
Yeah.
if you guys are down for this, Robbie, what do you think? Uh, this
in.
is such a cool, valuable conversation. I don't even think I think for the listeners, just it's valuable for me just to hear and listen and have like just have a space. Let's just ask some questions. So we'll either come up with another topic for all of us to talk about, or we'll figure something out. We have another month to figure it out, but we'll get you two wonderful ladies back on here, and we'll do this again because this is fun and really enjoyable. So thank you too, really, from the bottom of my heart, for your vulnerability, for being accessible, for being true to you and showing it here.
Thanks for the opportunity. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Glad to be here. Thank you, guys.